no
8:37
equipment
a.m.
access,
Los Angeles County
no
Courthouse.
suspension of
Less
attorney
than 2 minutes
communication.
after an anonymous witness
Everything
began their
inside
testimony,
solitary block
the
C
judge suddenly
continued as
ordered the
before.
immediate arrest of Jennifer
Everything
Lopez
except
on the
the
spot.
fear.
No one
If
had
a
time to
female
react.
warden can
Jennifer
vanish
stood
after
up,
a
stared
single
directly at
nothing
the jury,
except
then
the
took a
fear.
step back
If
before
a
law
female
enforcement
warden
could
can
reach her.
vanish
She
after a
slipped through a
single
staff-only
note,
back
the ones
door
who
and
once
completely
worked
vanished from the
overnight in
courthouse
that area,
premises.
the
Police
ones who
described the
filed for
situation
leave without
plainly.
giving a
There's
reason,
no doubt about
the
it.
ones
She
who
fled.
saw
What
but never
paralyzed the
spoke.
entire courtroom
No one mentions
wasn't
the
just
note,
J.Lo's abrupt
but
escape,
everyone
but the
knows
content
it
of the
appeared.
testimony itself.
And if what it
was
says
Jennifer
is
Lopez
true,
who forced
then
me to go.
punishment.
She planned it with
Part
Diddy.
3.
She knew I would
The
be
person
drugged.
no longer
She's
in
the
the
one who set
system.
up the cameras.
internal
The air in the
personnel
courtroom
database
turned
of
to
the
ice.
Atlanta
A
Federal
defense
Detention
attorney
Center
dropped his phone.
updated its
A
weekly
female juror
roster.
shot up from her
Under the
seat,
category
her hands
Special
trembling in a
Personnel
matter of
Code
seconds.
Adjustment,
One of the most
the
glamorous
name of
icons in
Warden
Hollywood
TD
was
was
stripped
marked
bare
as
with a single
removed from
sentence.
system by
And Jennifer
administrative
Lopez,
order.
once a
There was
headliner
no
at the Super
decision
Bowl,
number
was now being
recorded,
hunted like a
but was
high-profile
deactivated.
criminal from behind
Her
the courtroom
personal
doors.
contact
The security
information
camera
disappeared
captured
from
the
the
final
internal
moment.
network
Jennifer
exactly
stepped past the
36
threshold,
hours
removed
after
her
she filed
sunglasses,
her
pulled out her
complaint.
phone, and burst
The
into laughter.
changelog was
Part 1.
executed from the
Arrest warrant
system's
issued in the middle of the
highest
trial
access level
Tuesday,
server,
June
a
17,
device
9:00
bearing
a.m.
the
inside
identifier
courtroom 14 of the Los Angeles County
located
Courthouse.
in
The
the
24th
coordination
hearing in the
office on
federal
the fourth
investigation
floor of the
series into
Security
Sean Diddy.
Administration wing.
Combs officially began in an
Only
atmosphere
two
that seemed
individuals
calm and
possess the
uneventful.
authority
No
to
one could have
perform a
predicted that just
system-level
over 30
personnel
minutes later,
removal at
this
that
very
tier,
room would
the
become the
head of
epicenter
Federal
of one of the
Human
most
Resources
shocking legal
and
upheavals in the
Detention
American
Center.
entertainment industry.
No
When Jennifer
confirmation
Lopez, the
exists,
top Latin
allegation
music
was
star,
made.
unexpectedly
The
became the
removal of
subject of an
Warden
emergency
TD's
arrest
name
warrant
was not
issued right in the
accompanied by
middle of the
any
session.
or
Presiding that day
protective
was Judge
reassignment.
Miles Radford, who had
At
handled several of
11:20
Hollywood's
a.m.,
high-profile
a printed copy of
scandals.
the personnel
According to the
deployment
original
chart
plan,
was
Jennifer was
generated
only
in
present as a
preparation
secondary
for the new
witness,
week's
quietly
schedule.
entering the room at
Under the
8:50 a.m.
section
dressed
marked
entirely in
Internal
black,
Alert,
wearing sunglasses
TD's
and
name
saying nothing to the reporters waiting outside. Everything went according to schedule until 9:24 a.m. when a protected witness referred to as Ms. D for confidentiality appeared via secure video transmission from an undisclosed location in a thick and suffocatingly tense silence. She began to speak with a trembling voice, yet her words came out crisp and clear. She claimed that the person who brought her to the party wasn't just Diddy but Jennifer Lopez herself, who according to the witness knew the entire setup beforehand, was the one who called her to attend, lied that it was a private gathering, and then led her into the room where the horrifying events began. The witness even asserted that Jennifer knew exactly where the cameras were placed. The entire courtroom fell dead silent. The stenographer froze mid-typing. Prosecutors exchanged stunned looks. A member of the jury sprang to her feet in shock. Jennifer Lopez remained seated, her face expressionless, but her eyes hidden behind dark glasses began to dart repeatedly toward the left side of the room. 3 minutes after the testimony, Judge Radford banged his gavel and abruptly ordered a recess of all proceedings, then solemnly read aloud the warrant based on the testimony of the protected witness and corroborating data filed under Appendix B-27. This court issues a temporary arrest warrant for Jennifer Lopez for the purpose of investigating potential complicity in the orchestration of coercive acts and the unlawful use of video recordings to psychologically intimidate the victim. This warrant is effective immediately within seconds. Court officers advanced from both sides of the room, but before they could reach her, Jennifer stood up, removed her sunglasses, took a step backward, gave a quick glance to her two attorneys, and turned off her phone right in front of them. She then pivoted and calmly walked toward the rear exit, the door designated for court staff, which is not accessible to the public according to internal reports. She proceeded swiftly through the ground-level service corridor and was seen at 932A. Menke entering the rear parking area where a silver-gray SUV with no license plates was waiting. Security footage captured the driver wearing a full face cap and mask, identity unknown. The vehicle pulled away within 30 seconds, exiting courthouse grounds at above legal speeds, bypassing 3 consecutive intersections and vanishing from surveillance in exactly 6 minutes, leaving no trail for security forces to follow at 10:12 a.m. The same morning, a state-level arrest order was issued. The FBI then formally took over the case under high-priority classification due to suspicions that Jennifer Lopez had been tipped off or had already planned her escape the moment her name was mentioned. Meanwhile, her social media accounts had not posted any updates since June 14th. Her public relations team declined to answer any media inquiries and maintained total silence. One security officer present at the scene disclosed in an internal report, "She moved like someone who knew every turn. No panic, no panic, no hesitation. This was not spontaneous. It was premeditated." What sent chills down the spine of the public wasn't just her smooth escape in broad daylight, but the disturbing nature of the witness's statement. If Jennifer Lopez truly knew about the cameras, knew the victim would be drugged and still led her into that room, then she is no longer an uninvolved celebrity, but a central link in an entire system of victim luring, hidden surveillance, and psychological manipulation through video blackmail. The trial was forced into an indefinite suspension. Defense attorneys protested loudly, repeatedly, but no argument was strong enough to deny that the case had officially crossed the line from a civil hearing into a federal criminal investigation. Judge Radford exited the courtroom at 10:48 a.m. without making any further remarks. He left behind a statement that read, "The court recognizes the risk of coordinated evasion and potential organized misconduct in the actions that have just taken place. All case files related to Jennifer Lopez will now be grouped under Class B felony pursuit. As per federal statute, outside the media descended into chaos. Jennifer Lopez's fans split into two camps. One side dismissed the accusations, calling them part of a political agenda, while the other expressed deep disappointment, labeling it the darkest stain on the feminist entertainment movement. One question captured by a local TV news crew outside the courthouse echoed through the air: if a global icon like Jennifer Lopez can vanish within minutes of an arrest warrant being read, how many other powerful people have done the same and gotten away with it?" Part 2, the anonymous witness, a testimony in the dark. The identity of the woman known only by the alias Miss D is currently being protected under a special witness security program, but the testimony she delivered on June 17th immediately altered the entire direction of the investigation through an encrypted video transmission. The only visible image in the courtroom was a shadowed figure seated before a blurred screen, her voice soft but dry without a single tear. According to internal audio transcripts, the witness had spent 2 weeks preparing for her testimony, yet she still had to pause 3 times due to emotional overload, and every word of that testimony was a direct blow to the image of Jennifer Lopez, who until then had only been mentioned in the case as a peripheral witness. I was invited to a party not by Diddy but by a representative of Jennifer. They told me there might be a chance to work with her music team, even hinted that I could appear in a music video if I made a good impression. I believed them, and I went. Those were Ms. D's opening lines, delivered calmly, but each word landed in the courtroom like a punch. According to her account, the party was held at a villa in Hidden Hills, nestled deep in the western suburbs of Los Angeles, a location often rented by A-list celebrities for private events. She recounted how Jennifer Lopez personally greeted her at the door, acted friendly, handed her the first glass of wine, and said, "Relax, everyone, here is a friend." For the first 20 minutes, everything seemed normal until she began to feel dizzy. Her vision blurred, and she gradually lost control over her own body. The witness described the most horrifying moment in a single sentence. "I was led into a room lit with pink lights, with a bed covered in a black sheet. I couldn't walk, but she still held my hand and pulled me in. When asked who she referred to the witness, didn't hesitate, Jennifer Lopez. It was her." Those present in court later recalled that the atmosphere shifted completely after that statement. The jurors collectively bowed their heads to take notes, while the defense attorneys simultaneously moved to object and asked to pause the testimony due to lack of concrete evidence. But the judge promptly denied all motions and allowed her to continue. Missy D made it clear that she couldn't remember what happened after entering the room. However, a week later, she received an anonymous email sent to her personal address containing a video clip over 90 seconds long showing her in a dazed, unresponsive state, filmed from the opposite corner of the bedroom. The video didn't clearly show whether anyone else was present, but the witness firmly stated, "I saw Jennifer's reflection in the wardrobe mirror. She was holding a phone." Not long after that, she began receiving threatening messages warning her to keep quiet if you don't want your career and family destroyed. The messages were unsigned, had no sender address, but contained highly sensitive personal information: her mother's home address, her sister's school schedule, her own travel itinerary. All of it suggested that the sender had access to a tightly organized and well-coordinated surveillance system. Prosecutors confirmed that these threatening messages had been archived and extracted as digital evidence. What raised even more concern was that metadata from the original video showed traces of an internal email account previously linked to a post-production studio, one that Jennifer Lopez had hired for music video editing back in 2021. While authorities have not made a direct accusation, investigators stated the connection is evident and is being cross-checked with a series of private transactions Jennifer made to unidentified partners in the past 3 years. One key piece of evidence under FBI examination is a set of off-the-books financial records, so-called black budgets, in which Jennifer reportedly wired payments to shell companies based in the Caribbean, a region commonly used for money laundering and financial anonymity. All of Mrs. testimony was delivered in less than 20 minutes, but it was enough to shake the entire foundation of the case, transforming someone previously seen as a minor witness into the central figure of the investigation. Her composure, the clarity of her statements, and her refusal to beg for sympathy captivated the entire courtroom. She ended her testimony with one short but resounding sentence: "I don't want fame, I just don't want them to do this to anyone else. Even if I die for speaking out, at least I didn't stay silent." As soon as the testimony concluded, the video connection was immediately cut. No one knows her whereabouts except for the Federal Investigative Team and the Witness Protection Unit, but what is certain is that her words placed Jennifer Lopez directly at the center of the storm, not merely as someone associated with the case, but now as an active suspect. In an urgent memo from the FBI delivered to the judge that very afternoon, the opening line read, there is strong reason to believe that Jennifer Lopez is involved in a coordinated scheme of coercion and victim intimidation through illegally recorded footage, supported by both testimony and forensic evidence, qualifying the case for federal-level criminal investigation. Later that same day, a copy of the testimony was forwarded to the special prosecution team, already investigating Diddy. As of now, Jennifer Lopez is officially being treated as a co-conspirator in a series of allegations involving decadent high-profile parties orchestrated by elites to recruit, control, and blackmail young women using sophisticated methods, where secretly filmed videos are the most critical tool of manipulation. Part 3. The J.Lo file: signs from the past. It wasn't only when the anonymous witness came forward with accusations that Jennifer Lopez's name began surfacing in investigations related to Diddy. In fact, for over a decade, amid legal records, quietly withdrawn civil lawsuits, and a flood of rumors that were taken down just hours after being posted by the media, her shadow had always lingered quietly but persistently, like a question left unanswered since 2012. A few reports had raised suspicions about Jennifer Lopez's presence at so-called model scouting parties hosted by Diddy's team, where young women were brought in to network with artists and sign image contracts. But most of these sources were swiftly shut down by counterstatements from her legal team, along with indications that some alleged victims had accepted private settlements. Another incident occurred in 2015, when a waitress at a private party in Las Vegas filed a lawsuit against two unnamed women, accusing them of forcing her into a private room, filming her, and threatening to release the footage if she refused to sign a non-disclosure agreement. One of the women was described as having the same body type, voice, and tattoos as Jennifer Lopez, yet only a few weeks later the case was dropped without explanation. In 2018, an anonymous account leaked a short video clip filmed inside a villa with interiors resembling Jennifer's private Bold residence. The video showed a woman resembling her standing near a bar with Diddy and an unidentified white male. Just hours after the clip appeared on X, the account was suspended, the video vanished, and every blog that had reposted it received copyright takedown notices from Jennifer's image rights management company. What's striking is that in all three instances where Jennifer Lopez's name was implicated, her legal team responded in the exact same way: full denial, no elaboration, and formal demands to remove all visuals. Citing privacy violations, an anonymous journalist who once worked at People magazine revealed that in 2019 she had prepared an investigative report on the darker side of J.Lo's backstage relationships with entertainment investors. But before the article even made it to the final layout, the editor received a call from a high-level advertising partner demanding the story be dropped or risk losing sponsorship funding for the next 3 magazine issues. The entire piece was shelved. The file was closed. The journalist was reassigned to the fashion section starting in 2020 as the hashtag #MeToo movement expanded and platforms for reporting abuse of power became more widespread. Not a single public accusation was made against Jennifer Lopez. However, investigators confirmed receiving several anonymous tips regarding a famous female artist who had collaborated repeatedly with Diddy at private events, describing her as someone who lured, drugged, and filmed women in pre-staged environments. Yet due to the lack of tangible evidence and no victims willing to come forward, those reports were temporarily archived. What raises suspicion is that each of these anonymous submissions coincided with major image boosting releases from Jennifer, either large-scale private concerts or high-profile music videos. A former post-production assistant who worked on one of J.Lo's projects in 2021 said there was always something weird about the shows where Diddy was involved. Crew access was restricted, no one could film during breaks, and Jennifer's room always had 2 layers of security, no entry allowed. Adding to public unease was a series of legal moves made by Jennifer Lopez, starting in 2022, that appeared to be preemptive, cover transferring most of her personal assets into shell corporations, minimizing appearances at public events, canceling multiple European tour dates without explanation, and most notably dismantling her old management team in favor of a new legal squad specialized in cybercrime and federal cases. When asked about this in a brief interview last year, she simply said, "I'm restructuring toward a quieter phase of my career," but in reality it may not have been restructuring at all, but a calculated retreat in anticipation of a system beginning to crack. Because in a recent internal memo compiled by the federal prosecution team, at least 2 individuals currently under investigation mentioned Jennifer as someone who arranged the guest lists for Diddy's parties and as the one who handpicked the girls who looked promising. If Ms. D's testimony is accurate, then this marks the moment where rumor connects with fact, a pivot point that could place Jennifer Lopez not on the sidelines but at the very core of a psychological exploitation ring constructed through music imagery, alcohol, and hidden cameras. At this moment, every past suspicion once buried beneath the stage lights and flawless red carpet appearances is now resurfacing like sunken corpses dragged up from the bottom of a lake, and to the investigators, what used to be dismissed as baseless gossip has now become viable leads. Jennifer Lopez's silence, stretching over more than a decade, is now facing the weight of justice. The question is no longer what she's done, but how much more she's still hiding. Part 4. the network behind the parties who was really in control in every case ever linked to Diddy. The phrase private party has been repeated over and over again as the starting point of disaster, an environment where victims were invited under the pretense of opportunity only to fall into a trap, so intricately staged. It seemed invisible, but this time the witness's testimony did more than describe an event. It exposed the machinery operating behind the scenes of those music-filled nights, the endless drinks and the dimly lit rooms, and the most shocking part, Jennifer Lopez's name was not outside of that system. Fact, she appeared at more critical junctions than the public ever imagined. According to confirmed information from 3 former logistics staff members who worked at Diddy's event venues, between 2018 and 2022 identities withheld due to witness protection agreements. Every party was divided into 2 layers. The outer layer was for mingling, light drinks, musical performances, and limited press access. The inner area was a gray zone where phones were confiscated, personnel were restricted, cameras were shut off, and ambient sound was constantly played to prevent audio recording. It was within this zone that victims were filtered as described by one internal manager responsible for room assignments and image review before guests were sent to the second floor. According to witness D and multiple former security staff, Jennifer Lopez was not merely a guest. She often arrived early before the party officially started and reviewed the list of female attendees. She was described as someone who had suggestion privileges and even intervened in selecting who was allowed into the private area under the pretext of creating a relaxed, welcoming atmosphere. One private security staff member who worked at a Miami event testified that Jennifer was present in the surveillance control room where auxiliary camera feeds were monitored, and that when he entered to fix a technical glitch, she looked at him, smiled slightly, and said, "You didn't see anything, did you?" He never reported the incident at the time, thinking he had imagined it until witness D's testimony prompted him to return and file an 11-page report with the Federal Investigation Office. Notably, some of these parties were not officially hosted by Diddy himself, but were instead organized through a string of small entertainment companies covertly linked to the same financial group headquartered in Nassau County, New York, where Jennifer Lopez had rented a commercial office from 2017 to 2020. That was the period when she announced a temporary break from music to focus on personal projects that, to this day, remain undisclosed. The FBI is currently extracting multiple technical pieces of evidence from a hard drive seized at the home of a former stage technician who had been in charge of lighting and internal camera coordination for upscale parties attended by Diddy and guest artists.
Present, and no longer has a voice who will pursue justice for her accusation.
One of which features a woman's
as
voice
of the
saying,
taken against
"Let me talk
Diddy.
to her privately.
No expansion
I
of
have
the
a way to make
investigation,
her listen."
no isolation
That voice
orders,
is currently
no
being
equipment
analyzed by a
access,
federal
no
audio
suspension
forensic
of
unit,
attorney
and is
communication.
reported to have an
Everything
over
inside
80%
solitary
match
block
with
C
Jennifer
continued
Lopez's
as before.
voice, based on
Everything
reference
except the
samples,
fear.
recordings
If a
dated
female warden
2021.
can vanish after a
Interestingly,
single
the
note,
timestamp on
except
this
the
audio
fear.
coincides
If a
with the
female
party
warden
night
can
at the
vanish after a
Calabasas
single
Villa,
note,
where witness
ones who
D
once
was
worked
reportedly
overnight
present,
in that
a
area,
particularly
the ones who
explosive
filed for
revelation
leave without
in
giving
the
a
federal
reason, the
prosecutor's
ones who
interim
saw but
report
never
is
spoke.
the suspicion
No one
that
mentions
Jennifer
the note,
Lopez was not
but
just a
everyone knows it
participant, but was
appeared.
listed as
And
the
if what it
bridge
says
between
is true,
high-profile
then
guests
punishment.
and the
Part
backstage
3.
technical
The
team,
person no longer in the
essentially
system.
acting as
The internal
person who
personnel
created the
database of
initial
the
sense
Atlanta
of
Federal
safety
Detention
that
Center
would lower the
updated its
victim's
weekly
guard.
roster.
Her presence,
Under the
a
category
global
Special
superstar,
Personnel Code
who once
Adjustment,
headlined
the name
Super
of
Bowl,
Warden TD
hailed
was
as a
marked
symbol
as
of Latin
removed from
female
system
empowerment,
by
was a
administrative
key
order.
element that
There was no
disarmed
decision
many young
number
women.
recorded, but
They
was
felt honored to be
deactivated.
personally
Her
approached
personal
by
contact
J.Lo,
information
who invited
disappeared
them
from the
into the real
internal
VIP
network
section.
exactly 36
This leads
hours
to a more
after she
disturbing
filed her
question.
complaint.
If Jennifer
The
Lopez
changelog was
the opener,
executed
then
from
who
the
was
system's
controller?
highest
Was
access
she
level
just a
server,
pawn or
a
the
device
hand
bearing the
behind other
identifier
moving pieces? A
DCCA1,
seasoned
located in the
prosecutor,
coordination
speaking
office on the
anonymously,
4th
said,
floor of
"With
the
Diddy,
Security
people think
Administration
of
Wing.
money and brute power,
Only 2
but with
individuals
Jennifer
possess the
Lopez,
authority
it's
to
all about
perform a
elegance,
system-level
intelligence,
personnel
and
removal
finesse.
at that tier,
That's what
the
makes
head
her
of
more
Federal
dangerous,
Human Resources
because no one
and
suspects
Detention
her.
Center.
Comments like these
No
once
confirmation
whispered rumors
exists
on
as
obscure
patient was
internet
made.
forums
The
are now
removal of
being
Warden
corroborated
TD's
with
name was not
investigation
accompanied
records,
by any
confiscated
or
data
protective
and testimonies
reassignment.
from individuals
At
who once
11:20
worked
a.m.,
inside
a
the
printed
system
copy of the
itself.
personnel deployment
What's most
chart was
terrifying
generated
isn't
in
just that one
preparation
such
for the new
party
week's
happened,
schedule.
but that events
Under the
like
section
this may
marked
have been
Internal
organized
Alert,
repeatedly
TD's
on a
name
schedule with structure and potentially protected by faces the public once adored, trusted, and admired. If the ongoing investigation proves true, Jennifer Lopez would not merely be implicated in a single case, but identified as a central figure in an ecosystem built on the exploitation of power.
where music lights and promises of success were used to lure victims across a line from which there was no return. Part 5. The warrant and the interim outcome. On the afternoon of June 17th, just a few hours after Jennifer Lopez slipped away from court through the technical rear exit, vanished entirely from law enforcement's radar, the Los Angeles Police Department officially escalated the manhunt statewide. They issued an emergency arrest warrant with a third-tier priority code, requesting cooperation from state and federal police units in regions where J.Lo might appear. She had owned property by 8:00 p.m. That same day, the FBI had stepped in, activating the Celebrity Tracking Division, an agency previously involved in the hunts for R. Kelly, Ghislaine Maxwell, and other high-profile public figures. Before midnight, a federal arrest warrant was issued, including a detailed description: female, Latina, 54 years old, possibly traveling via private jet or vehicles registered under intermediary companies. Within 24 hours, all of Jennifer Lopez's social media accounts were placed under enhanced surveillance. Her personal email and electronic payment systems were temporarily frozen. 4 properties registered in her name in Miami Beach, New York, and Puerto Rico were designated as assets under watch, and private aviation companies on the West Coast were ordered to supply passenger manifests matching the suspect's description from the previous. The Department of Homeland Security confirmed that less than 10 hours after losing track of her, Jennifer became a federal-level person of interest on par with suspects evading investigation for organized crime and human rights violations. However, her absence from the media spotlight turned the situation into a twofold scenario. While authorities raced to locate her, public opinion remained sharply divided. A large number of her fans dismissed it as a dirty political flip, targeting the image of America's most prominent Latina artist, and attempt to twist the anonymous witness's statement into a smear campaign to destroy J.Lo's global reputation on social media forums. Hashtags like Free J.Lo and #WaStand. With Jennifer began trending while legal and media experts exercised caution, noting that the volume of evidence released so far shows this is no longer coincidence. It's a pattern. Petition demanding that Jennifer Lopez make a public appearance had garnered over 250,000 signatures in just 2 days, while her legal team remained absolutely silent, responding only in an internal memo. We are handling it. Meanwhile, investigators submitted formal requests for international cooperation under mutual legal assistance treaties, anticipating the possibility that the suspect might flee U.S. territory using a secondary passport or a chartered aircraft. Experts analyzed that if Jennifer Lopez deliberately hid in a country without an extradition treaty such as the United Arab Emirates, Maldives, where she had previously performed, bringing her back home could take months. Establishing a legally complex precedent for an A-list public figure. In an internal investigation memo, a brief note stamped in red, suspect exhibits strategic mobility, cannot rule out assistance from high-level figures in entertainment and global finance. For now, all release schedules for her new album, movie contracts,
present,
and promotional events
and no longer has a
canceled
voice who will
or had
pursue
their name
justice
removed.
for her
Several
accusation.
brands that had previously
As of the taken
collaborated
against
with
Diddy,
her are
no
reviewing
expansion
their
of the
promotional
investigation,
agreements to mitigate
no
legal
isolation
exposure.
orders, no
Should the
equipment
case
access,
proceed to criminal
no suspension
prosecution,
of attorney
Netflix,
communication.
the platform
Everything
co-producing
inside Solitary
a
Block C
biographical
continued as
documentary
before.
series about
Everything
J.Lo,
except the
confirmed
fear.
it has
If a
indefinitely
female
closed the
warden can
project in
vanish after a
Hollywood.
single
Marketing
note, thing
posters
except
haven't
the
even
fear.
been taken down
If a
yet.
female
But
warden
behind
can
the
vanish
scenes,
after
the
a single
industry has
note,
already
the ones
started
who
to
once
retreat,
worked
gradually
overnight in that
distancing
area,
itself from someone
the ones who
once
filed
regarded
for
as the
leave
queen
without
of
giving a
every
reason,
stage.
the ones
As
who
of
saw but
72
never
hours
spoke.
since
No
the
one
warrant
mentions
was
the
issued,
note, but
Jennifer
everyone knows
Lopez
it
has not
appeared.
surfaced. No
And if what it
official
says is
representation
true,
has
then
spoken on her
punishment.
behalf.
Part
No
3.
social media
The person
posts,
no longer
no
in the
denial
system.
video,
The internal
no
personnel
open letter
database
to
of the
public.
Atlanta Federal
Media,
Detention
she has
Center
vanished
updated its
completely
weekly
in legal
roster.
terms.
Under the
She has
category
never been
Special
more
Personnel
present
Code
and in the
Adjustment,
public's
the
eyes.
name of
The
Warden
question
TD
is no
was marked
longer
as
was she
removed from
involved,
system
but
by
rather, how
administrative
deeply
order.
was she
There was no
involved,
decision number
and who else
recorded.
is she
It was
shielding behind the
deactivated.
scenes?
Her personal
This is no
contact
longer an
information
investigation
disappeared from the
centered
internal
around a missing
network
party or
exactly
one person's
36 hours
testimony.
after she
This is
filed
the
her
moment
complaint.
when an icon
The
is
changelog
being
was
placed on the
executed from the
executioner's
system's highest access level server, a device bearing the identifier DCCA1, located in the coordination office on the fourth floor of the Security Administration wing. Only 2 individuals possess the authority to perform a system-level personnel removal at that tier, the head of Federal Human Resources and Detention Center. No confirmation exists as the application was made. The removal of Warden TD's name was not accompanied by any or protective reassignment. At 11:20 a.m., a printed copy of the personnel deployment chart was generated in preparation for the new week's schedule. Under the section marked Internal Alert, TD's name
and billboards swiftly removed or hid all glowing celebratory or flattering content about Jennifer Lopez, replacing it with neutral brief notices that meticulously avoided terms like victim survivor or any unsubstantiated defenses. Netflix and Amazon Prime each placed J.Lo related programs on temporary hold, while YouTube disabled comments on all her older music videos to curb waves of attacks, mockery and cancel culture campaigns on television. Evening news broadcasts no longer refer to her as a multi-talented artist. Instead, they call her by name, followed by the tag federal fugitive and suspect. CNN launched a 3-day special segment analyzing the distortions in the legal protections for celebrities, citing Jennifer Lopez as a prime example of celebrity media power, undermining the law for years. On Fox News's late-night broadcast, presenters called it the most shocking event since the fall of Harvey Weinstein. A veteran commentator even declared, "We are not witnessing the fall of an artist, we are witnessing the collapse of a Hollywood feminist fantasy, a cult painted with gloss and sustained by complicity on social media. The division is stark. One side insists Jennifer is a victim of a covert revenge plot because she knew too much and stopped taking orders, while the other side bluntly calls her the queen manipulator, accusing her of long using her fame to shield those behind the scenes. But the media backlash was only part of it. In the artist community, avoidance started rippling outward. Beyoncé, who had performed alongside Jennifer at multiple charity events, offered no comment, yet Parkwood Entertainment's management account deleted all images connected to events featuring J.Lo. Shakira, the Latin superstar, who once called Jennifer her soul sister at the Super Bowl, changed her profile pic and unfollowed Lopez's
will leave you
official
speechless.
account.
When the
Ben
first
Affleck,
images from the
her
federal
ex
raid
and
on Diddy's
rumored to
$40
have
million
quietly
Los
reunited
Angeles
with
estate
her
were
last
released,
year,
no one
has
expected
remained
this.
silent. Prominent
Neatly
artists
stacked in
of
display
color,
cabinets like prized
Cardi B,
possessions
Lizzo,
were 200
and
bottles
Sia
of baby
have
oil.
stayed
Right next to
completely
them,
quiet.
over
Meanwhile,
900 bottles
smaller
of lubricant,
names have
rows
started
and
to drop
rows.
hints
It
on
looked less like a
podcasts
home and more
and
like a
live
warehouse
streams,
for something
saying
far more
things like,
disturbing.
"There's
These
always
weren't the
been
kind of items
something
most
off
people
everyone
keep in
knows.
bulk, but
Some
for
things they
investigators,
just
it
haven't
painted a
dared
chilling
speak up."
picture.
A source
Why would
inside
one of the most
Hollywood
powerful men in
confided,
hip-hop need
"No
this
one
much?
wants to be the
And more
first to
importantly,
attack
what
Jennifer,
exactly were
but
they
no
used
one
for?
wants to be the last to defend her
It
either."
started with a knock, then a
Simultaneously,
battering
the
ram.
wave of
On a
pulling
quiet
brand
morning in March
partnerships is
2024,
cascading like
Homeland
dominoes.
Security
Versace
agents stormed
announced
Sean Diddy
it's
Combs'
pausing
LA
all
mansion
image
in the elite
licensing
neighborhood of
agreements
Palm Beach Hills.
involved. Jennifer
Not long
Lopez
after,
coach
another
removed
team
all
hit his Miami
billboards from
property
its
on the
"We
glitzy
Are
Star
All
Island.
Glamorous"
These
campaign
weren't just
featuring
casual
her Dolce
searches,
and
these were
Gabbana,
federal raids
and
with
Revlon
helicopters
confirmed
overhead,
they're reviewing
agents in
ethical
full tactical
clauses
gear,
in their
and entire
contracts.
blocks on
Credit
lockdown.
card
What were they
issuers,
looking
who
for?
previously
That question
used her
didn't stay
image,
unanswered
demanded
for
her
long.
photo be
Inside the
removed from their
sprawling
identification
17,000
systems.
square foot
A
mansion,
senior PR
agents
advisor
uncovered a scene that
explained,
left even
"We're not
seasoned
judging
investigators
guilt
allegedly
or
plan
innocence.
and
We
control
only
the
know
sex
that any
performance series,
face under an
which
arrest
he
warrant
called
becomes a
Courthouse.
risky asset,
And
and
he often
brands never
electronically
tolerate
recorded
risk.
them.
The
For
most
few bottles.
serious
We're
impact
talking
may not
hundreds.
be on
It looked
TV
less
or
like
ad deals, it's on the public psyche, especially among women who once Jennifer Lopez as a symbol of independent strength and breaking boundaries. Countless articles that once inspired audiences with her rise from the Bronx to Hollywood's summit are now cited as evidence of a different kind of power, the subtle, backstage kind, a power exercised quietly by those who always know how to avoid the spotlight when needed. In women's support groups, instead of inspirational quotes, people now share old clips with questions like,
present,
"How many of those
and no
smiles
longer has a
were
voice
real?
who will pursue
How many
justice
times
for her
did we believe
accusation."
someone because they made
As of the
everything
taken
look
against
beautiful?"
Diddy. No expansion of the investigation, no isolation orders, no equipment access, no suspension of attorney communication. Everything inside solitary block C continued as before. Everything except the fear. If a female warden can vanish after a single note, nothing except the fear. If a female warden can vanish after a single note, ones who once worked overnight in that area, the ones who filed for leave without giving a reason, the ones who saw but never spoke. No one mentions the note, but everyone knows it appeared. And if what it says is true, then punishment. Part 3. The person no longer in the system. The internal personnel database of the Atlanta Federal Detention Center updated its weekly roster. Under the category Special Personnel Code Adjustment, the name of Warden TD was marked as removed from system by administrative order. There was no decision number recorded. It was deactivated. Her personal contact information disappeared from the internal network exactly 36 hours after she filed her complaint. The changelog was executed from the system's highest access level server, a device bearing the identifier DCCA1, located in the coordination office on the 4th floor of the Security Administration Wing. Only 2 individuals possess the authority to perform a system-level personnel removal at that tier, the head of Federal Human Resources and the detention center. No confirmation exists as patient was made. The removal of Warden TD's name was not accompanied by any or protective reassignment. At 11:20 a.m., a printed copy of the personnel deployment chart was generated in preparation for the new week's schedule. Under the section marked Internal Alert, TD's name